there was a routine property review within GMP. And in that property review, an officer discovered actually a fetus in the police property system. And that fetus had just sat there for 2 years. It opened up a can of worms, and it turned out that the fetus had been seized from a young girl who became known as Ruby in the drama Three Girls that I worked on. But Ruby had been groomed, sexually abused as a 12-year-old, then a 13-year-old. She was made pregnant when she was just 13 by one of the gang of abusers. Police seized that fetus without her knowledge, without her consent, without her mum knowing, and it had been put into a police property system where it had sat for 2 years. Nothing had been done with it. So when the property review was done, that fetus was found, and they decided that they had to do something about this. So I was brought in onto that job. We had dozens of men that we knew were abusing children in and around Rochdale, also in Oldham. I was asked to bring that young girl on board as a victim. By this time, she was 14, I think. I was asked to also bring on board her sister, who had also been horrendously groomed and sexually abused by dozens of men. But 2 years before, she had been arrested on suspicion of being a madam at the age of 15. But I was told at that point that she should never have been arrested, which she absolutely should not have. That I was being asked to bring those 2 children and their family and other children potentially on board to tell us what had happened and to prosecute this gang of paedophiles. I spent 8 months interviewing those children, and they named and identified multiple men. Ruby gave her consent, as did her mum, for us to use the DNA that proved who had got her pregnant. Now, she was a child who had been 12, maybe even 11, but 12 to my knowledge when the abuse began. She had a statement of special educational needs. She was in a special school. She was being picked up at the school gates by her abusers. We had a fetus. We had DNA that proved who had got her pregnant. He was a 40-year-old man married with 3 children of his own. Can you believe that even that man was never charged with rape?
Why not?
Because they took the easy option and decided to charge him with sexual activity with a child. He was out of prison in less than 3 years, and she was not even made aware or consulted about his release. He was allowed to go back to Rochdale, where he still lives, to walk around where he bumped into her in the local Asda, walking round the end of an aisle. She went into a total meltdown, ran out of the shop and rang me in, floods of panic, saying he was called Billy. That was his street name. His real name is Adil Khan, and I'm not. His name is in the public arena because he was prosecuted and convicted, but he was out of prison in less time than you get for parking on double yellow lines sometimes. So I was fucking fuming.
Sorry. I know. No.
I'm trying to pick the big things out.
You're doing a great job. Yeah. I just want to... There'll be people watching this going, what the hell is she talking about? How is it possible that in modern Britain, with all of that evidence that you're talking about, DNA, fetus, statements, etc., somebody who's just there to be prosecuted? I understand sometimes these cases are complicated and you can't get the right information and all of that. But in this case, it doesn't seem to have been the case. Why? You say they took the easy option. Why? Why did they take the easy option?
Because if she had been 12, there is absolutely no defence. It's statutory rape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she was just 13... because the fetus and the number of weeks pregnant she was, we knew exactly when she'd got pregnant. because she was just 13, that would have meant that they would have had to prove that she did not consent to her rape. In my book, a 13-year-old child with special needs cannot consent.
In most people's books, I
Yes.
would argue.
But the CPS will say, well, it's a lot easier to prove. They don't have to prove anything then, because there's a fetus, she was pregnant, we knew who he was. So he had had sexual activity with that child. They didn't want to go to a trial where they would have to prove that she could not consent. So they took the easy option.
Is that a money thing, Maggie? Is it a
It's
money
a resources and a
Yeah.
money thing.
Yeah.
And it's lazy.
Yeah.
It's lazy and it's not right.
No.
It's not right. And if that was my daughter, I would want that man prosecuting for rape because she was not able to give consent. She was drunk every time she had sex. We had a fetus, as I keep saying.
Yeah.
So for me, that decision was made for resources and because they couldn't be asked, basically. But that doesn't make it right. It's wrong. In relation to the other young girl, the other child, who I had been given promises that if I brought her on board, that I would be allowed to hold her hand, both their hands, right through to trial. 8 months down the road, again, like Augusta, they made the powers that be, so chief constables, gold commanders, people in CPS sat down and they made a policy decision that they were going to build a case around one child. And whilst I accept that, because I know that we can't always bring everybody into one trial, it becomes too complex, I do not accept that we cherry pick which rapists we prosecute and which children we support as victims. If they have given us evidence and they have spent months identifying their abusers and the top lawyer in the CPS has identified them as a victim, I'm sorry, you don't change your mind 8 months down the road. And that's exactly what GMP did again. They changed their mind. And it was. If anybody wants to watch the drama, Three Girl, it is a drama. It does not go nearly far enough. The police and the CPS get off very lightly. Again, I'd say read my book. But what happened about 8 or 9 months down the road, after these kids had unburdened their souls to me, I spent every day with them, really. They couldn't have done more to help the police. And 8 months down the road, Friday afternoon, I just get, my boss comes up to me and says, "Oh, Maggie, can I have a word?" Yeah, of course you can. This girl had just identified 10 of her abusers in an ID parade. She fell apart, but she'd done it because she didn't want the same thing to happen to other children. My boss said to me, "Just want you to know, we've made a decision. We're no longer going to use Amber. But don't get upset. We are going to use Ruby." And I just felt, I just couldn't, you know what? I felt like murdering somebody. And I just picked my bag up and I said, and this scene in the drama is actually pretty true. I just said, "Well, you know what? I am not going to use anybody. It is not right." And I was out of there. And I couldn't believe that I was seeing a repeat again of what I'd seen previously.